الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير هدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. You know, my brothers and their sisters and my youngins as well, we always grapple with the question. It's indifferent, doesn't matter which generation you take. The question is always, if there isn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if there isn't Allah azza wa jal, if He's so nice, if He's so merciful, then why is there so much bad taking place in the world? And this is a common question. In fact, that's the foundation question of the atheist movement and even the agnostic movement. Is, hey, if there isn't Allah, why is there so much bad stuff? But 9 times out of 10, this question doesn't even start there, right? Because let's face it, human beings are typically nafsi, right? So technically, what's happening in macro world is less of the concern. What more of the concern is, hey, if everything is bad happening to me, if everything is bad is happening to me, there can't be an Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? But the problem is they magnify the bad and they never look at the good. But that's a different story. That's a different question. Now, many of us, when we ask this question, we feel that somehow we are more smarter than everybody else. Or the youngins would say, hey, this generation knows more than the previous generation. You guys are just old. Right? But what they don't understand and what we don't understand is every generation thinks that about their older generation. Right? So everyone says, hey, people previous to me are old. I know more than my old people. I know more than my dads. And then the reality is our children are going to say the same thing. Why? Because human beings, generally speaking, we need time. Right? So just like how we get smarter as we grow older, human being as a species obviously will know more and grow smarter as we get older. So the fact is, it is true, yes, the dunya bid'ah, so the innovation of the dunya is going to happen as long as human beings are around. But the questions in terms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they've been around since. So even this question on, hey, if all this is happening and I interpret this to be bad, and because I interpret this to be bad, therefore that cancels out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't exist. Or I don't know what I believe because there's so much bad happening. So now what happens is sometimes we view things as abstract and we don't really want to think about what it actually means to us today in our language, in our mod, because of course, Islam will applied in 1022 is going to apply now, it's going to apply 3022, but the interpretation of how we understand things change. So let me bring this down to a parallel, simplistic parallel even, so that we can understand when we say that, what are we actually saying? So now many of us here work for corporations. And many of us aspire to work for corporations. And many fathers here are going to program their children to, hey, go to school, so you can go get a job at Google, you can get a job at Microsoft, whatever the case is. Now, each of these corporations has a CEO. And for those in stock, they know that if the CEO leaves, whatever happens to the CEO and the renowned CEO, especially if he has to leave, if he dies or something happens, the stock will tank. The stock of this corporation will tank. Why? Because even this finite corporation needs a head. And co-CEOs don't work. So even this finite corporation needs a head. Now, why does this CEO, 10 times out of 10, public markets, private markets, doesn't matter, CEOs get paid the most? CEOs would get paid the most, especially founder CEOs, because not only do they have a higher salary or want a higher salary, they're also going to have stock. But let's forget about the stock, salary-wise. Why does this CEO get paid so much? Because the CEO doesn't just have to worry about himself. The CEO has to worry about the customers, the suppliers, the countries, everywhere that's employees and their families. He has to worry about law, he has to worry about geography, he has to worry about all the issues happening in supply chain, he has to worry about all the movements in the interest rate, he has to worry about all these things. Whereas the finance guy just has to worry about finance. Whereas the HR guy just has to worry about HR. Whereas the legal department has to just worry about legal. He or she, the lead essentially, has to worry about all of those things. Just bear with me a second. Now, sometimes he's going to need to make decisions that doesn't necessarily please everybody. Why? Because he has the macro picture in mind. Whereas the finance guy only looking at his vertical. Whereas the HR person only looking at what's happening in there. Doesn't matter to them. So effectively, the CEO is the alim of the corporation. Effectively, the CEO is the one who knows everything, who understands everything, and who is responsible for everything. He is the alim of the corporation. Now, let's say he has to make a decision. He has to make a decision that, hey, you either have to let go of a department of 20 people, or you have to let go of a department in a different country of 50 people. Let's say that's the decision. He obviously can't keep both. He obviously can't keep both. So let's say he lays out the department of 20 people and he keeps the department of 50 people because just the sheer numbers, he's like, you know what, if I have to fire someone, I might as well fire the people with 20 versus the department that has 50. So now, my brothers, you tell me, what is the department of the 20 going to say? The department of 20 is going to say, this is the worst CEO ever. I hate this guy. I hate this company. All this stuff. But the department of the 50 people, what are they going to say? He's a good CEO. He's considerate. He thinks about us. He wanted to save us. So now, the people on the ground don't necessarily understand why he made that decision. All they care about is themselves. The people that kept their job, they're saying, you know what? Amazing, alhamdulillah, very good CEO. I like the company, everything is good. But the people who got fired, they could care less about the investors that were, on the CEO. They could care less about maybe this is a legal ruling. They could care less about any of that. All they're saying is, I lost the job, he sucks. He's the worst CEO. Now my brothers and my sisters and my youngins understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Al-Alim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Al-Alim. He has to balance everything. He has to balance where the leaves fall, where they fall, when they fall. He has to balance what Muhammad's heart rate is, how the blood is going to flow to his toes, and how to make his heartbeat catering to exactly what he's doing. So for example, my heartbeat is higher than you guys sitting down. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to cater to that. He has to provide for me differently than he has to provide for you even at this moment. Or Fatima, he has to worry about her emotions. He has to worry about what makes her happy, what doesn't make her. He has to worry about all of this. He has to balance gravity. He has to balance oxygen. He has to worry about males, the balance between males and females. He has to worry about all of this. Now, brothers, there's a story that will highlight all of this. There were two mothers in the NICU. So the NICU is where the children go who need extra help. One mother, her child couldn't survive without a transplant. The other mother, her child was last breath on a ventilator. Alright? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-alim, imagine, understand that. But now the mother who needs a transplant, she's making dua, Ya Rab, please give my child a transplant. Please figure it out, let my child live. Of course not, she's the mother, even the father can do it. Now the other mother is making, Ya Rab, please save my child. He's on a ventilator, he's on a life, please help me. Now the mother who's making dua for a transplant, she's not realizing that in order for her dua to be accepted, remember, she needs a transplant. Means someone has to die for the baby to get the transplant. So she's not understanding that. All she cares about, Ya Rab, save my child. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can't accept both duas. He can, of course. But in this situation, the girl who made the dua, let's say her dua got accepted. Let's say her dua got accepted and there's a transplant that appeared for her, but it was from the baby who mother was making dua, Ya Rab, save my child, but now that child is... So the mother who was making dua for transplant didn't realize that in order for her baby to be saved, another child has to die. Or it could be every day, right? When we have babies, you could be in the hospital hugging your baby, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen, all this stuff, inviting your family over, but not knowing that there's a balance somewhere else. There's a janazah happening. There's a janazah happening. So all these things, we have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-alim. He decides what happens, what doesn't happen. Sometimes we may not understand. Let's even take the Prophet ﷺ's life, for example. Do you think the Prophet ﷺ knew that why the war in Medina is happening? Do you think he cared? Because he was so occupied with what he's doing. Do you think the people even then knew why the Aus and the Khazraj are fighting? Nobody knew. Just, hey, these guys are barbarians, let them fight, they can't get along, no unity, all this stuff. But the folks in Medina didn't even know that they're making way for Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ didn't even know that he's going to go back to Medina. Now, understand that if that war didn't happen, right? Because from the outside in, we can always say, hey, these guys can't get along, no unity, all this stuff, right? If that war didn't happen, Prophet ﷺ would not go to Medina, and effectively there would be no Islam. Effectively, there would be no Islam. Because sometimes we're so occupied in the micro things that we don't understand the bigger picture. Because we believe just because we have a brain, we're designed to understand the bigger picture. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is controlling everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed us, customized us to how we need to be. He is designing this whole process how it needs to be, because at the end of the day, it's going to come out to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs it to be or wants it to be. So sometimes we not understand what's going on. But at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the master plan. So what am I trying to say really? See, my brothers and sisters and my youngins, just like that employee in the company may not understand what the CEO is doing. Just like that employee may not understand what the CEO is doing. There's no difference. That employee who's a driver, for example, he could complain all he wants, but he's not designed to understand what the CEO is doing. Yes, he has a job. Alhamdulillah, he has a job and he's working. But he's not designed to understand what the CEO is doing. Likewise, we are not designed. So just like how the driver, when he gets hired, all of a sudden he's the CEO or he thinks he's the CEO, same way, are we saying the same thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't know what he's doing? We need to be in charge. Is that what we're saying? That, oh, the world is not going according to me. Therefore, because it's not going according to me, that means that either there is no Allah or I don't know if there's an Allah, or now I'm going to all of a sudden question the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we're saying at the end of the day. At the end of the day, that's what we're saying. That somehow you, Ya Rab, don't know what you're doing. I do. And sometimes, just like those others, sometimes your dua gets accepted, other times your dua will not get accepted. Your dua, when you make dua, it's not an Amazon Prime. Ya Rabbi, I need something, okay, delivery to my house with the specification that I want it to be. Only then do I believe in Allah. But the minute now, remember, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you and has to accept your dua, remember that we're one person. Just this country alone has about 35 million people. Just this country alone. This continent, call it 600 million. Right? If you include this continent. If you include the world, 8 billion people. That's not even counting the other creation. That's not even counting the other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is providing for everyone. And the minute something goes wrong with us, all of a sudden, Ya Rabbi, you don't exist. I'm the boss. I will tell you what to do. And just because my life is a little bit hard right now, therefore you don't exist. When my life is easy, yes, you're beautiful. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, I do that prayer, I do all those things. But the minute life gets hard, Ya Rabbi, you don't exist. Or now I'm going to question you. So mental tattoo, I always say this. Mental tattoo in your brain. Number one. Just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the faculties in the brain to understand, doesn't mean we are designed to understand. Just like that example, right? If you take the Google CEO, nobody would argue with you that the Google CEO who is running the show versus a programmer who just got hired, nobody would argue that they're different. Whether the programmer can achieve that, that's not, as of right now, they're not the same. So likewise, now imagine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator, man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're trying to tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what to do. We're saying, Ya Rabbi, you don't know what you're doing. Just because I'm suffering a little bit of stuff. Mental tattoo that we're not designed to understand that. When we get to Jannah, inshallah, we can ask Ya Rabbi, Ya Allah, why did you do that? Can you explain, please? My mother died. I was without a mother and my father died. Why did you do that? Why? We can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we get there. Until then, also understand that when you're making dua, for example, you're making dua for a job. Let's just make it simple, same concept. Someone else is making dua for the same job. Someone else is making dua for the same job. So now who decides who gets the job? Both duas can be accepted, right? It's only one job. So one time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may accept one dua, the other time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may accept someone else's dua. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows which dua to accept, which dua doesn't not to accept. Again, going back in our own history, many of us know the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam got kidnapped from his brothers, thrown into a well. From the well he got kidnapped, he thrown into slavery. From slavery he got thrown into jail. From jail he got thrown into the king's house. From the king's house he escalated to essentially the minister of finance, right? Okay. Now the question is, right? If all of this didn't happen and he was still in the house of his dad, amongst his 12 brothers, let's say his brothers didn't do this. If he was still in the house of his dad, would he become the minister of finance of Egypt? Because in order for him to become the minister of finance of Egypt, he had to be found in Egypt first. And in order for him to get to the king's house, let's work backwards now. In order for him to get to the king's house, he had to meet the guy in jail. In order for him to meet the guy in jail, he had to be in jail. In order for him to get to jail, he had to do something that can get him in jail without losing his reputation. Because he's a prophet at the end of the day. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to make him do some ajib thing to go to jail. So he had to maintain his reputation and go to jail. In order for him to go to jail, he had to be kidnapped. In order for him to be kidnapped, the brothers had to think that story. In order for them to think that story, that dream had to happen. When that dream happened, that's when everything changed. So now, do you think at that time, Yusuf alayhi salam is thinking about, hey, how do I become Minister of Finance? All he's making dua for is, Ya Rab, take me out of here, man. What did I do to deserve? I didn't even ask for this. I don't want to be prophet. If this is what I have to go through, I don't want to do that. Except, what did he do? He knew. He knew because he's a prophet. He knew that this is out of my control. All he could do is make dua, Ya Rab, make it easy for me. When he was trapped in the story where he's with the queen, my brothers, understand, the doors were locked. Right? It's not that he could just open the door easily and leave, right? It's not like that. It was a dungeon. So many of us would say, Ya Allah, I didn't do, I'm there in a situation and I just got to do it. All he did is dua. Ya Rabbi, I need to get out of here, man. Door had to open from outside. So there's really no way, there's no escape. All he did was make dua. Ya Rabbi. He acknowledged that I don't know nothing, I can control nothing. Ya Rab, I don't want to do this, get me out of here. Get me out of here. Why? Because he knew things happened, I can't control it. All I have to do is try my best. And the rest is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's another story. It's a local brother actually. He was going through, he met the wrong people. And when he met the wrong people, his parents shipped him to the US because their other family was there. But the problem is they shipped him to the parts of South Central Los Angeles, which is worse than what their parents didn't know that. So now he's getting caught up more now. So now he's involved even worse, further. But when he gets into jail, someone shows him Islam. But the same people he was hanging around with, they gave him a duty that, hey, you got to get rid of this guy. And he knew if he doesn't do it, they're getting rid of him. This is just how the world works inside there. All he did was, Ya Allah, I don't know what to do. Because if I don't act this, they're going to take me. Of course, all of this happens with your permission, but sometimes, these guys are barbaric, they don't know. And he did dua. The next day he woke up, his transfer was arranged to a different prison. And he didn't put in the request. All because he acknowledged that, Ya Allah, I have no control of the situation. I don't know what to do. Please help me. And sometimes that's all you need to do. Not sometimes, all the time, most of the time. Anything that happens. Ya Allah, I don't know what to do. I'm going through this. I have no idea. Please get me out of this. But at the same time, as the saying goes, you have to tie your camel. Right? So that doesn't, we have to balance in our time nowadays. Just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is running the show doesn't mean you don't have to do nothing. Your job is to try your best. Someone told me when I was growing up, you have to work like it's up to you. But you have to make dua because it's not. Work like it's up to you, but make dua because it's not. So that's point number 2, balance. Understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is controlling the show. But that does not alleviate you from putting forth the effort, first of all, to show and understand and comprehend that, Ya Allah, I submit. When I say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, it's not just on my tongue. It's in my heart. I understand, I acknowledge, Ya Allah, I do not have control of this. You are in control of everything. I tried my best. Please get me out of here. That's point number 2. Last point, inshallah. There's no easy way to say it, so I'm going to say it. Just because you believe something, so for example, the person that we talked about in the beginning, where something bad happens, now all of a sudden, the belief is, hey, there can't be a Lord. Right? Just your opinion is not wahi. Your opinion, what you believe, what you strongly believe even, is not wahi. Because otherwise there would be, I don't know how many people in this room, 100, 200 different type of deens that we would have. So your opinion is not wahi. What you believe or the conclusions you've come to is not wahi. In order to help ourselves in not falling that trap, we really have to assess the situation. And I recommend everyone doing this tonight when you go to sleep. Before you go to sleep, ask yourself a simple question. Simple question. What is in my control? Simple question, right? What can I control? And my brothers, my sisters, my youngins, I will guarantee you, you will only come to one answer. And that answer is your effort and your decision making. Other than that, nothing in our control. Nothing. And I challenge anybody to tell me what's in our control beyond those 2 things. You will quickly realize that we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to just live our daily life. Point number 4. I did some work and I wanted to know, because growing up I always wondered, I can say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, yes, but why do I need to do sujood? I say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, but why sujood? Why sajda? Why sajda? Because if you look at all the other institutions, all the other religions, they don't, sure they can do sujood, they can do sajda, but they don't. It's not mandatory. But why in Islam is it mandatory? Why? Because it doesn't make sense. Why? It's a deep topic, my brothers and sisters, but understand this. Every limb we have, right? The length of our arms, the length of our feet, everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us our height. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, we can't change that. The only thing that is in your control that you can change is what's between our ears, is our brain. So just because you were born not knowing certain knowledge doesn't mean you can't get it. But just because you have a short hand doesn't mean you can get a longer hand. So the only real thing that gives you individualism really, that really defines you, is what's in your brain, what's between your ears. That's why the only thing in our control is the effort and the decision that we make, because that's the only thing we can control. Now, that's where sajda comes in, right? We're telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this faculty that you've given us, that I have a sense of individualism that I may have pride for, I am submitting to you, Ya Rab, and telling you that truly, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. I submit to you, and whatever you tell me to do, I will try my best to do. Now, are we going to make mistakes? Of course we're going to make mistakes. But when we make a mistake, it's our job to fix the mistake. As they say, first mistake, shame on you. Second mistake, shame on me. Mistakes are okay, but they're mistakes. Don't repeat the mistakes. And I'll tell you what worked for me. Every time you do make a mistake, drop sujood. Every time. Ya Rab, I made a mistake. Please forgive me and mean it. And let the Lord know, I'm submitting to you. With the capacities that I have, I'm submitting to you. And I really mean La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. عباد الله رحمكم الله، ان الله يامر بالعدل والإحسان وايتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله اكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون.
الله أكبر.